Why do speech and debate? Well, you can kind of break all the reasons down into either academic or sort of life benefits. So let's start out with academic. The first reason is reading comprehension and vocabulary. In speech and debate, students are exposed to a wide variety of literature at largely a college, high school level, which means that they're going to get a lot of big words and help with their vocabulary, as well as they're going to have to go through large amounts of text, whether it's debates research or even looking through lots of scripts and cutting a script. And so all of that means they're going to get faster reading, faster processing. So when they do take a standardized test, or they take any type of test in a class, they can read through the prompt, understand it better, and be able to spend more time actually answering the question. The second big reason is critical thinking. So speech and debate requires you to see issues from multiple sides. Students are forced to defend both sides of an issue in debate. They might have to research pro and con, and they don't know which side they'll have to defend in a particular round. Or in a speech, they might have to kind of balance between multiple judges and try to have an idea that is able to effectively advocate their position no matter who is in the back of the room. Another great advantage is organizational processing. In speech and debate, it is very important to have very good management of large resources of evidence. So in debate, they might have cases that are hundreds of pages long, organized very meticulously in a heading structure so that they know exactly what page to go to when they need to have a specific response. Speech, same way. They might have a large variety of scripts. They might have different versions or iterations of their own piece, and keeping track of it, or even analyzing their own selves, their own stutters, their own areas they have to fix their blocking or their acting techniques, are things that require a large amount of organization to be able to pull off. Another good advantage of speech and debate is research projects as well. And so just like those organizations, it comes, you have to do large amounts of research to back that up. And so students get very, very good at using Google Scholar and various databases associated with that to find not only like a article online that says something, but one of the best articles on that position they can have, the most authoritative, and have that be what backs them up. Another good advantage of speech and debate is sort of memorization. This is a little bit more in speech, that in speech there are some events where you're forced to memorize a strong 10 minutes of a speech. And not only memorizing the words, they then have to work on remembering all the various nonverbal movements they do as well, and the various poses they do. And that's something that takes a lot of work, a lot of multitasking, and is something that is beneficial academically, because to memorize something means when they have to do a presentation, they can do a little bit better, or just keeping track of large amounts of things at once. It's also helpful for scientific methods. So in debate specifically, it is evidence-based debating, which means for the most part, you want to have evidence guide your arguments. And so one component of good evidence is data. And one essential component of all good policymaking is one that explores the use of data in government-based decisions. And so this is something that is very important to look at methodology between studies, to look at sample size, to look at whether it's correlation causation, how do they control for various types of control variables, all things that are very important things that get taught in a speech and debate course. Finally, you get course subject diversity. So speech and debate is largely at a high school level, which means students are exposed to philosophy, economics, government, law, history at a high school or early college level. And so they get to have sort of an advanced intro to these classes. So when they do take them, they're a little bit one step ahead of the curve. Beyond academic benefits, there are life benefits. So speech and debate, I believe strongly, helps tremendously with tech literacy. So in speech and debate, students if you're in a debate round, you have your laptop, you have a mouse, you have programmed with macros, you have to be fluent with Google Docs or Microsoft Word. You have to be able to be very fast with technology. When another student in the round asks you for that evidence, you have to give it to them quickly. You have a limited amount of prep time. You can't just say, I'll get back to you, which means this is something that is very driven into students, is to be much better in the 21st century with technology. It's also important for geographic diversity. While we no longer get to travel because of COVID this year, this means that we still traveling virtually. At these tournaments, there are students from all across the nation competing, and that our students are being compared against. So in these rounds, they get to see not only their own faces, their own styles, their own viewpoints, they get exposed to people from all throughout the country and how they act, perceive others, and even judge the rounds if it's their judge. And so it's something that's very helpful for understanding, what the country's like and how to adapt to people. Also, time management. Debate and speech can take a lot of time. You can go down the rabbit hole and spend every single hour of your waking life and still never get 100% done with anything. But that's kind of like life, like any large project, any large program, anything in the tech industry, legally or anything like that. You never really solve the problem 100%. You just kind of get to, you can't do anything perfect. You get to something that is a reasonable amount of work that seems really well and gets the job done. And so, because you have to balance between lots of things requiring your time, which means you have to pick and prioritize and ultimately set it up to where you can do the most best overall without over prioritizing one thing and blowing off everything else. Also helps with healthy competition. Competition is kind of a fact of life. You apply for jobs, you apply for colleges, you apply for all sorts of positions in life that are based on a competition. Speech and debate is meant to get students used to that. It's meant to teach that competition can be healthy, it can be fun. Not everyone is always a winner. Not everyone is always a loser. It's about finding things that is good for you, that you like doing, and to do more of it. And that is what competition is about, and is why the classes and the whole program is set around making sure this competitive element, which is what is essential in speech and debate, is one that remains healthy and fun throughout. Also, friends, there are big life benefits to speech and debate, that you find people that think like you, act like you, are exposed to the same viewpoints as you, and you really become best friends with them. I know when I was in high school and college, most of my best friends in the country were not actually in the school I was in. They were actually throughout the country at schools I competed against, on the weekend, because we would talk between rounds. We would compete against each other during rounds. And so you made lifelong friends simply because of speech and debate, and it was something that was valuable in a lot of people's lives. Presentation skills is another big one. So in speech and debate, you have to get comfortable with your own in your own shoes. You have to get comfortable speaking, being able to slip up here and there, and still carry on in a fluid conversation. This is important because in the real world, if you're at a presentation, it might have the best possible, market idea. It might have the best scientific proofs behind it. But if when you go in front of that board, that investment group, and you have to explain your position, why it makes sense, and why they should invest in you, if you just kind of stutter and say, but my math checks out, they're not going to pick you. They're going to pick someone that, is speaking smoothly. They're trying to sell a product and ultimately have everything down, and they might not be as good as the science. They might not have as effective as a product, but because they can package it well, they can show they're organized, that lets them have a level of credibility and persuasion that means that is very, very helpful in your life no matter where you end up. Finally, college entrances. So, usually speech and debate is it could be good on club or an extracurricular activity you did to get you into college, but probably not as important as maybe your academic grades or your college scores for standardized tests on SATs, ACTs. But with COVID, as you're all hearing and finding out, standardized testing is declining. Not only are all the standardized tests getting canceled, colleges are saying we're not going to use them anymore. And some of them, like the UC system, are trying to fundamentally almost going to abandon them or create their own. And so it is such that a lot of these places are beginning to look at things that are outside of academics, because while academics matters a lot, it can't be the only thing. They need tiebreakers. They need things to differentiate students. And so speech and debate is that, because it is an extracurricular activity that can show a lot of effort, a lot of rewards, and it can really show someone who's looking in the counseling office, even if they're not involved in speech and debate in admissions office, they could say, hey, I can tell this person is really committed. They've been to this many tournaments. They've had this results. They've got this many trophies. They're at this level in the country. This is their ranking. This is something that is very, very helpful quantitatively and is a good tiebreaker to help get a lot of people into college, or at least the college of their choice.